Good evening. Welcome to the 2015 Winthrop Town Council President's Debate. We're coming to you live from the studios of WCAT. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Winthrop Sun Transcript, the Winthrop Community Access Television, and the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce. Participating in tonight's debate are, first, our two candidates. On the left, Mr. Robert Driscoll. On the right, Mr. Craig Mail. Our three panel members are, representing the Transcript, Ms. Sue Ellen Woodcock, representing the Chamber, Dr. Paul McGee, and representing WCAT, Mr. George Rainville. I'm Paul Levy, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Working behind the scenes this evening are two timekeepers, Ron Moses and Betsy Shane, and also a great staff of camera operators, directors, and technicians. Let me review the format and ground rules for this evening. The debate will be divided into four segments. First, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves and make an opening statement. Next, our panel will ask 11 questions. Both candidates will have an opportunity to answer each question and will be given 90 seconds to do so. In the third segment, the candidates will ask each other 3 questions, and the candidates will be allotted 90 seconds to answer each other's questions. In the fourth and final segment, both candidates will be given 2 minutes to give a closing statement. The candidates have no prior knowledge of the questions to be asked this evening. Moments before we went on the air, the order of questioning was determined by lottery. Before we begin, I'd like to remind our viewers that we are not debating nuclear reduction treaties or worldwide trade agreements, but perhaps we are debating issues that are even more relevant, those that directly affect our lives each and every day here in our great little town of Winthrop. So listen closely and enjoy. Gentlemen, please do your best to stick to the time limits. Please understand that I will be interrupting you if you go over those time limits. Good luck to both of you. And now to begin the debate, candidate Driscoll, you have 2 minutes to deliver your opening statement.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Driscoll, and I'm a candidate for the office of Town Council President. I want to thank WCAT, the Winthrop Transcript, and the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this, as well as the moderator and the panel for their commitment of time to participate in this. I thank you for that. I also thank Craig Mail, my opponent, for being here as well. I've lived in Winthrop my whole life. I was born here. I went to school here, graduated from Winthrop High School. I lived away only during a few years when I was in college, and a few years after my wife Kathy and I were married. We moved back to Winthrop. We raised our 2 sons, Bobby and Chris, at our house on Somerset Ave, which we've owned for 25 years this year. I have a long history of involvement in the community and town government. I was elected to and served for many years as a town meeting member. I think I was 19 years old when I first was elected. I was appointed to the advisory committee and served on that committee for many years. I was elected to the Winthrop Town Board of Selectmen, and I served a term for 3 years, the last of which I was the chairman. And for the past 2 years, I've worked with the Citizens Finance Committee. I was appointed to that, and that's a committee that works closely with the town manager and the CFO to review the town budgets as they're being created each year. Regarding some other activities that I've done in the town, I was on the board of directors of the East Boston Health Center for 10 years, and I served as the treasurer, and I was also on the finance committee. The role of town council president is complex. The primary aspect of this position, similar to the Board of Selectmen, is serving as the executive branch of the town government. And while there are aspects of the role that are similar to town councilor, there are some differences. And most critical, I think in my opinion, is the difference between making sure the town adheres to the town charter in all of its processes. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Mr. Mail?
Thank you very much. Good evening, citizens of Winthrop. My name is Craig Mail, and thank you for taking time out to watch me this evening. My name is Craig Mail, and I'm a candidate for the president of the Town Council of Winthrop. I currently serve as a councilor from Precinct 4. This past year, at the request of the current council president, I became vice president of the council by a unanimous vote of the council members. Although this form of government is only 10 years old, I would be the first councilor that would ever be elected to council president. While I've been on the council for the last 4 years, my ties in Winthrop go back farther. My grandparents moved here in the late 20s. My mother was born in town. My mother, Rona, was a teacher for many years, and her name adorns the town scholarship committee. My father, I believe, is the last living member of the school committee that built what we then called the new high school. My uncles and cousins have operated many familiar Winthrop businesses, Barron's Market, and of course my Uncle Carl at Brown's Drug, and my other uncle Dave Groman at the Shirley Hardware Store. While I brought my business experience to the council, both in my business and my IT background, in the 4 years I've been on the council, I've been to and participated in hundreds of meetings. Any of you that have come to the meetings over a period of time have seen me in those meetings, whether it was licensing, appeals, the economic development, the ferry, harbor, or anything along those lines. Tonight, my sole goal is to help you understand the 4 words that will stand behind my campaign: my experience in the town council over the last few years, my vision, my leadership, and most importantly, my passion, the passion that I've had to stand through the rigors of this campaign, and the passion that I have used over the last 4 years to accomplish all the meetings that I have been to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Now we'll go to our second segment of the evening, where our panel will have the opportunity to ask questions of each of the candidates. The first questioner will be Sue Ellen Woodcock from the transcript, and the first question will go to candidate Mayo.
Good evening, gentlemen. The Ordinance Review Committee is reviewing the town's charter right now. Several people have questioned how the size of the town council is actually working. Should the council be restructured?
My answer?
Yes.
I personally sat in at that meeting when that was being discussed, and I actually gave my thoughts for that. I first ran as a town councilor in Precinct 4, primarily because it was in my precinct. It was a more manageable opportunity for me, and I wasn't a well-known person around town. I had never taken part in any of the political elements. I had spent my time raising my family. I was able to run for town council, quite frankly, because no one else ran. But I was then able to use my passion to build the level of experience I had. I personally do not believe that the ordinance should be changed. If it is, maybe they would like to rethink about having the councilors at large. But the fact is that this form that we have now, where you can come from your own precinct and you can run by not having to run a townwide election, I think broadens it. Running a townwide election is a very difficult and strenuous opportunity for most people. It requires time and effort that may not be able to be had. And in many particular situations, you'll find a lot of people may be reticent to do that. Also in those meetings, as you attended, we did talk about a lot of things, paying counselors and other ways to get more people involved in the process. It's my feeling that if we go off and we alter it and we make individuals run for townwide elections, we may be actually cutting down on the amount of people that may not be willing to withstand a townwide election.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Mr. Driscoll, would you like the question repeated?
No, I think I understand the question. I was at one of the meetings where that was discussed, and I walked away feeling like the current structure of the council works. I think that there may be opportunities to change some of the other aspects of the council, how it operates. As I campaign, I know I've gotten feedback about from citizens who feel somewhat removed from the process, and there may be some things that can be done at the council level to try to change that, to make people feel a little bit more included. But I think overall, I think that the structure of the council works. I mean, there's good representation in each of the precincts. One of the issues that came up in that meeting was about reducing the size of the council. And I think I mentioned at that meeting that there were so many committees and subcommittees that councilors serve on, that to reduce the number that we already have, we just put an inordinate amount of stress on councilors who already are spending a great deal of time in meetings. So I think the current structure works.
Thank you very much. The next question will come from Paul McGee, and it will be addressed to candidate Driscoll.
Okay. Mr. Driscoll, attracting new businesses to Winthrop as well as retaining and supporting current businesses in our community is of paramount importance to our Winthrop Chamber. Have you formulated any potential plan or vision for retaining or attracting new businesses to Winthrop?
I've thought about that, and I look at the boutique restaurants that have developed in Winthrop over the last 15 or 20 years, and I think about how that's been a success. So, I mean, 20 years ago, there was probably, maybe the Winthrop Arms was a restaurant that many people came to from out of town. There were very few other ones that were well known, and I think rules were changed, whether they be liquor licenses, or BYOB laws, or zoning laws that allowed construction of a better facility to house some of these restaurants. It worked, and now we have a thriving restaurant business. A couple of weeks ago, from two different people out of town, they indicated to me that they were coming to Winthrop to go out to dinner, which I thought was pretty interesting. But I think that's a model. I think that's the model that we should try to replicate in other businesses. How do we attract those businesses? I mean, Winthrop's not it's not a huge city. We're not going to have Home Depots or TJ Maxx's here. Those businesses are too small. So the trick is, I think, trying to identify what types of businesses would be attracted and would be able to thrive in a community like Winthrop.
Thank you. Mr. Mayle, would you like to hear the question again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Mayle? Attracting new businesses to Winthrop as well as retaining and supporting current businesses in our community is of paramount importance to the Winthrop Chamber. Have you formulated any potential plan or vision for retaining and attracting new businesses to Winthrop?
Dr. McGee, I'm glad you used the word vision, because I think that that's really what I bring to the table. So let me address what I consider to be one of my greatest hopeful visions for this town. The high school, middle school that we're currently using down the center is going to be going through a reuse. In the past, we've had some problems with reusing. We've had issues with the hospital, we've had issues with the Highland School that take a long time. I've proposed over the last couple of years that we seriously consider going out of town and with state aid, try to set up a business incubator in that space. A business incubator would allow young startup organizations to come in, rent space at a reasonable rate. And where is the hook for Winthrop? The hook for Winthrop is that we would be the place that they could come, become involved, start their businesses. They would pay, as I said, a moderate rate, but what would happen is they would give us a percentage of their business if they ever moved on and became public. That is one of my thoughts. A second thing that I recently did is I went to the town council and they proposed a motion which was sent off to the planning board. And the planning board has been asked now to come up with a business plan for McGee's Corner. As the new school gets built and traffic becomes central in that area, I think it's a perfect opportunity. And my third thought is I think the town, through the Chamber of Commerce, should start to go out and start to look for businesses, smaller businesses that do very, very well. Antique stores, stores that do well in a group setting.
Thank you.
Sure.
George Rainville will be asking the next question to Mr. Mayle.
As a follow-up to Paul's question, I would like to pursue the business aspect a little bit more.
Sure.
And the question is, should Winthrop focus more on residential development as it has, or provide better incentives to businesses to fill abandoned and underutilized buildings? And would a more accurate population estimate influence your decision?
I'm sorry, the last part of that?
And would a more accurate estimate of the population, which is not very well estimated right now, be influence your decision on which preference you have in terms of development?
You know, I think what ends up happening today in business development is that you have to look at a variety of situations. Each area in Winthrop is unique to itself. We do find issues in the center with business development, but in other areas of town, there are very few vacant stores available. Smaller stores seem to go better than larger stores. As I made a statement at my last time, I think we should be going out there and looking for the type of business that may end up working. We do have a decent amount of restaurants in town. We have to look out for saturation points. I have seen other areas where arts and crafts stores, antique stores, those have a tendency to work well amongst each other. So one art store doesn't do well, 3 have a tendency to do that. For other areas, I think we have to look at mixed use. Mixed use has become very, very popular in many areas. Mixed use has been proposed for the center right now with a set of anchor stores on the bottom and then apartments or condominiums going up. And I think that ends up being something that we have to look at. That being the case, I think through the planning board, we each have to look at each property. Winthrop is not ripe with development opportunities. So the opportunities that we have to be handled very judiciously so that we get the right mix. We can't forget that the building that we build today will probably survive many of our lifetimes. So what we build today, we have to be careful about because it doesn't just affect us, but it affects those that come after us.
Thank you. George, why don't you repeat that question
This question I have?
Yeah.
Okay.
for Mr. Driscoll?
Should Winthrop focus more on residential development or provide better incentives for businesses to fill abandoned and underutilized buildings? And would a more accurate population estimate influence your decision?
So I think the first part of that is really about demand. I think in this area, as we've seen in East Boston and in Winthrop and other communities, there's just been a huge increase in the amount of demand for housing. In East Boston, it's exploding. I think some of that's spilling over into Winthrop. So I think the market to some degree determines that. And I don't, the town can try to control that, but if that is what the demand is, then that is what we're going to end up building or not. But I think on the commercial side, I think we need to do both, and I do think that the mixed use zoning is an appropriate zoning to try to use to do both. I mean, so we can have retail on the first floor and residential on the second. I think it was a good idea to create that type of zoning, and it's starting to be used, and I think that could be a really good mechanism going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Woodcock will now ask candidate Driscoll the next question.
In the past few months, there have been several requests before the town council for SDODs, the Special Development Overlay Districts. That special zoning designation. At times, the process has seemed confusing to residents who live near any of the proposed SDODs. It seems to go to town council first, then to planning board, and I believe back to town council. And the neighbors are confused about when they have their input, whether it's before the town council or if it's before the planning board. Is this the best way to approve the reuse of certain properties in town?
I think the use of the SDOD is a good mechanism, but I have seen the confusion at meetings about various projects. There is the process as you describe it. It starts at the council level. There's a period of time. The council submits that to the planning board. I think it's at that stage where the planning board really starts working with the developer to understand what the project is. And I think it is at that stage of the process that people who live in the area could become involved. They could attend some meetings of the planning board to understand a little bit more about the project. One thing that I've noticed, and maybe this causes confusion too, I've had this happen even in my neighborhood, where people hear about a project for the first time late in the process. And I think that's not because proper notice hasn't been given or legal notices haven't been put in the paper, but for some reason people aren't paying attention to that. And I think there might be more that we can do in terms of notifying people who live in an area at an earlier stage in the process so that they're aware and can participate at an earlier stage.
Thank you. Mr. Mayle, would you like to hear the question
Please.
again?
There have been several requests for SDODs, and at times the processes seem confusing to people who may live near any of these proposed buildings that are going to be reused. Goes to the town council, planning board. Is the SDOD the best way to approve the reuse of certain properties in town?
I think the concept of the SDOD is a very fair concept. You have a piece of property, you want to change the zoning on it. The problem is the way the plan is laid out, and it's my feeling that the law as it stands right now does not satisfy the needs of either the developer, the town council, the planning board, or the neighbors. As a matter of fact, I think it pits the council against the planning board, and that's something I think we have to change. In doing that, I have already been to the Ordinance Review Committee and asked them to look at this, and that's something that they are going to look at. It is a very, very confusing, law for myself, and I've been caught in the middle of it. I have implicit trust in all of the committees. As a matter of fact, I go to most of those committees so that they will understand that I am with them and I'm behind them. They don't get the support they need, and that's something I've seen for a long period of time, something I hope to change in the future. But I have brought this up to the Ordinance Review with the hopes that they will smooth it out. So it clarifies exactly. I don't, as of now, understand why it comes from the developer to the council, who immediately passes it to planning, who sends it, has a hearing, sends it back, and then it goes back again. It should stop. If the council has no say in the zoning, then it should not be their prerogative to have a vote. But they do have a say, in my feeling, in the zoning for the neighborhood. And one of the things that I think becomes important for developers to think about is certainly the character of the neighborhood of which they're developing in.
Thank you. Mr. Mail, Dr. McGee will be asking you the next question.
Okay. Mr. Mayo, the ferry is coming to Winthrop. What would be your position in regards to directing monetary resources to the marketing of the ferry to the Winthrop community and surrounding communities, especially Boston?
Okay, thank you very much for that. Because one of the first committees I had the chance to sit on was the harbor management, I've been very involved with what goes on over the ferry over the last couple of years. And because I only have a minute and a half to describe my views, I do want to say one thing. Both in the Citizens Finance Committee and through the finance budget procedure, I am willing to put $300,000 into the operation of the ferry to be split over the next 2 years. If we can't be successful with that type of investment, then I think the town really has to take a solid look at whether or not a municipality should be in the ferry business. But that being the case, I ask everybody to go to my webpage to take a look at the fact that I do have a ferry plan. So how would I do it? I've spoken to Jim McKenna over the last 3 years about what we need. One, I think the town needs a social media director. Secondly, I think it needs a cruise director. If we're going to be bringing people on the ferry into Winthrop, then we have to set out a marketing area. That marketing area for me is very, very defined. It starts off at the Circle down by the Mass General, goes all the way up Cambridge Street, out to the seaport, and includes the North End. We have our cruise director create a series of events. We have our marketing people market to that small group of people. We coordinate with restaurants to bring people from Boston to Winthrop, and we coordinate with restaurants in Boston to bring that. I've also sat down and broken down the ferry day, schedule, and time parts to provide for the town a more accurate determination of what we could see. But again, I do say a $300,000 cap.
Thank you. Mr. Driscoll, do you need to hear that question?
No, I understand it. It's interesting to me, I was on the Board of Selectmen when we kind of began in earnest these discussions about a town pier, a ferry terminal, harbor master building, and a ferry. And it started 20 years ago. And Matt Lanza was on the Board of Selectmen with me, and that was a project that he was shepherding through. And you know, it's taken all these years. There have been fits and starts in all of those projects, all the pieces of that project. And I think that the ferry is the last piece of this. And we tried the ferry before, it didn't work. I think we tried it again, it didn't work. I think that this is as good of a plan that we have come up with in all of the attempts to bring a ferry into Winthrop. And I think that town manager Jim McKenna in the FY16 budget put together a business plan that outlines the thinking that he has about using that ferry and how to fund it. And it does include an expectation that we'll need to subsidize that ferry operation to the tune of $100,000 a year for 3 years, at which time it's hoped for and expected and projected that it will become sustainable. If that doesn't happen, I too think that the town needs to take a hard look at that and determine whether it wants to be in the ferry business for an indefinite period of time.
Thank you. Mr. Rainville has the next question for candidate Driscoll.
Drug-related issues have become more problematic in Winthrop, as has been the case across the state. What specific initiatives would you recommend that could identify and help addicts, as well as crack down on dealers?
Well, I think that is a huge problem, and I work at the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center, and I'm familiar with some of the things that are going on in that organization that could be used in Winthrop. The East Boston Health Center is actually going to have a school-based health office in the new high school. That's something that's going on right now, and within that operation, within the school-based health program, I think there could be some drug education that goes on. There could be some drug testing that goes on. There could be some kind of a mechanism to assess whether a particular student is perhaps using opioids or something like that, and then if that were happening, to direct them to the proper resources. So something like that I think might help. It's a tough problem across the whole area. I think that the police have their hands full to try to combat that, and I think that maybe we can do some more investigative work through the police department to try to identify if opioids are being sold in Winthrop.
Thank you. Mr. Mayo?
I'm comfortable with that
Thank
question already. The drug issue is a serious epidemic around town, and quite frankly, the high school is not going to solve it. The epidemic that we're having with opioids in town are not coming from the high school. They're coming from people like you and I that are going off, having accidents, and getting hooked up on prescription drugs. When those prescription drugs go away and the pain doesn't, the opioids have a tendency to come in. I was very touched last year throughout the budget process when I was listening to the chief of police, the fire chief, the COA director, and I sat there heartbroken night after night. And I said to myself, and I said to Jim McKenna, one of the things we need to add in this town is a social worker. We have too many issues. And why opioids is a big issue, Mr. Rainville, so is senior hoarding, seniors that are living with younger children who are disabled. The human condition is very, very difficult for many, many people. And I thought by getting a social worker on board, which we are now planning on doing, that we can start to address some of those. Also, I know, I'm not sure if you're aware, but through the police chief, we have now set up a drug court situation where we're now bringing some of these people who are being arrested, who have no prior convictions, into this program where we can start to bring them back to where they were before they unfortunately were hampered by this disease. It's a terrible issue, and I think the social worker that I thought about and fought for over the last 2 years was a good idea, and I hope we continue it on.
Thank you. I'm going to have the opportunity to ask a couple of questions too, so I'd like to ask the first question to candidate Mayo. The town of Winthrop has not had a master plan for many, many, many years. With the new opportunities for economic development in Winthrop, would you support the development of a master plan, and how would you help to get it developed and executed, if you did support it?
Thank you. No, it's not a matter of supporting it, it's a matter of making it part of my presidency. Winthrop, as Malcolm Baldrige, I think, said, is at the tipping point as far as I'm concerned. We've come on a long struggle. Over the last few years, we've done a tremendous job in bringing our financial house in order. $750,000, $1.5 million, $2.2 million, and a likely similar amount of money this year. My feeling is that it is incumbent upon the town right now, and I brought this up at the council meeting the other night, to sit down and start a committee of individuals in town, people who have been here for a long period of time, people who have just gotten here, and start to sit down and decide what type of city we want to be, or what type of town we want to be in the future. Do we want to be a town that is above or below? And more importantly, I think by coming together and bringing this and creating our own vision, we will bring a level of self-esteem to the town that will go a long way in ensuring this. So do I think we should do it? No, I think we have to do it. I don't think it's a matter of thinking. Should a master plan come out of it? Yes, we should discuss economic development. We should discuss the town that we want to be, and that should be comprised of all the individuals. The same way we set up the school building, we set up a community plan, young parents, older people, to give us all a chance to say, what is our vision? Where do we want to be? Not next week, not next month, but when our children look back at us in the future.
Thank you. Let me just rephrase it quickly, Candidate Driscoll. Would you support the development of a master plan, and how would you help to get it developed if you did?
I definitely would support the development of a master plan. I think it's kind of been a missing piece of our planning for many years. I think there has been discussion over many years to create a new master plan. I think the last one was done maybe in the 50s or something like that. We're kind of lucky in a way that the town has developed and some good things have happened absent a master plan, but I think that we could do a lot better. And the way that we would do that, I think we need to work with our planning board and clearly the town council, sit down and definitely include all of the business folks in town to really hash out how we're going to do that. What are the interests of the town? What direction do we want to do? We're talking about, like right now, a redevelopment of the Winthrop Center. I mean, that really is, it's an interesting idea. It's a good idea in many ways, but it is not being done in the context of anything larger than just the center, I think. And I think having a master plan in place would actually be advantageous and allow us to move forward in a more expeditious manner. I also think creating a master plan isn't something that happens overnight. I would imagine that that is a years-long project. And so it's not going to be the solution overnight. It's going to be something that takes some time after the proper parties are set up and a committee set up to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Woodcock, you have a question for Candidate Driscoll.
Yes. Now that the vote to fund Miller Field has been postponed until March, how would you plan the project, and should it be a comprehensive project that would also include the tennis courts and the other ball fields that are down in that area of the new high school?
I don't know the answer to that specifically, but I think those answers need to be had before we actually start presenting an override to the town. I think the council did a good job, I think, by delaying this. I think everybody wants this, many people want this to happen. I think that there's a certain requirement for economic prudence on the part of the council to look at projects like these and try to do them as economic as possible. That said, I mean, we can't roll out a plan if we don't know what the plan is. So I think we really need to get a committee together to examine what the best use of that is. I've heard ideas from having the stadium moved down to the soccer field at Fort Banks, to having it moved to Veterans Field, to all kinds of other ideas. And I think that needs to be nailed down before we move forward. And I think putting the right group of people together in a committee format and receiving lots of input from the community, from the schools, will actually be necessary before that happens.
I want to thank Bob for bringing up a couple of the points I brought up at the meeting the other night. But I will tell you, and I will honor the fact that there is a committee that has been sitting around, and not sitting around, they've been working diligently on Miller Field. It's a group of people. I know that Vinnie Crossman is on it, and I have explicit trust in a committee that he operates. This committee has sat down and brought up one plan, but they brought up one plan the way we always bring up plans in Winthrop, and that is with a price. What can we do for this price? When I got to the finance meeting the other night, the one thing I wanted to get across is I don't want to start by looking at what we can't have. I want to start by building what we can. So I threw out the idea. The Miller Field project, I'm for. I think we need a new field. I think it will bring a great amount of joy to the citizens of the town, from young to old. The thing that I am concerned about is Miller Field itself. We have to build it up 3 feet, and in that case, we're still going to have some issues with water. I don't want to be sitting there in 10 years knowing that I voted for a $4 or $5 or $6 or $7 million project and the field is starting to buckle. We have issues at Veterans Field. We have issues over at the tennis courts. They all need to be addressed. If you're going to do that and you talk about your master plan, then we also have to take a look at how we want to handle the issues of traffic at the Gorman School. That is why I suggested possibly moving the entire operation to Salucci Field, where we could then exercise our opportunities to build the roads. So am I for it? Yes. Am I for it? What I've asked Mr. McKenna to do is I've asked him to ask the committee to have more public meetings so that more of us can get involved in it right now. But again, special thanks to the committee that's put in a lot of time and effort so far.
Thank you. Dr. McGee, you have a question for candidate Mayo?
Yes, I do. Mr. Mayo,
Yes.
as Winthrop looks to revitalize various areas of the town, the parks, for example, having, I feel, been wonderfully renovated over the last few years, or to the future plans to revitalize the French Square business area. Do you have any thoughts as to the maintenance of the present and future projects of the town? Let me just add a
Go ahead.
caveat. One of my prime examples, which always comes to mind, is the paving stones down French Square, where they were never really maintained. I think there was considerable expense to put them in. When they were first put in, they were beautiful, but then over time, I believe they needed to put a coating or something protective, which wasn't done. And I think the town has done a good job in replacing some of the stones, but really something I think that cost a considerable amount of money with some maintenance, I think could have looked considerably better now, because the old stones juxtaposed with the new stones, I think look terrible. So in terms of maintenance, future projects, do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
You know, a lot of us have been around town for a long period of time. We all knew each other when we had more hair and less need for glasses. And sometimes we have a tendency to think that we're still living in that town. I think the town manager form of government has been an extraordinary success for Winthrop. And I'll give Jim McKenna a tremendous amount, and I'll give Tim Gordon a tremendous amount of effort with their vision. But more importantly, they've kept us financially secure. We've gone to the table and eaten what we've needed, but we haven't gone overboard. And because of our financial capabilities now, and because of the fact we are continuing to build up our budget, we're now able to handle maintenance in a different way. So I think our maintenance issues in the future are being looked at a lot more. If you notice around the schools, many of the elements in our schools and our buildings are now handled by outside contractors. I've recently worked with the town to think about moving a lot of our IT operations offshore so we can start to get some fixed costs so we can look at those things appropriately. In terms of maintenance, the parks issue was unique because it was a public-private. I believe your name is on a few stones, and I think your name is on a couple of bricks down there too. So that provides, and people in Winthrop want to help, and all we have to do is ask them. So I think when I buy a bench for my mother, I'm not buying it for right now. I'm happy to make a sustaining effort towards that, and I think that that sustainability will go a long way in helping us with some of those issues.
Mr. Driscoll, would you like to have that question repeated?
No, I think I understand it. I think that maintenance has been an issue in the town for many years, and due to budgetary constraints over many years, we have not been able to probably maintain many things, as you know, we've heard about maybe even in the schools or parks or public places. I do think that in the last few years, the town has done a better job of maintaining parks and other places. I mean, I understand the issue with the bricks in French Square. It looks a little funky, and I think, but those bricks were cracked, and at least right now, the way I look at it is, years ago that could have been done, but now it's being done. Something's being done, at least to temporarily repair that and make them safe again. But I really think the town has to invest. We invest in all of this infrastructure. I think it's really important to budget properly for maintenance in the town, and I think we're starting to see that. I think the town government structure, the DPW, and we're doing a lot more of the maintenance and repair work that probably in the past we were not able to do because of the expertise of folks. And I think that's really starting to change the way the town looks. Looking at the wooden railings all through town down Veterans Road right now is a good example of the town doing work that previously maybe couldn't be done. So I think there is some effort to do that, but more needs to be done.
Thank you. Mr. Rainville, your final question for candidate Driscoll.
What are the specific town-related issues that you plan to focus on over the next few years that would further add to the strides the town has made over the last decade?
That's a good question. I think, I think one of the big things that we have is the new school coming on board, and I think there's going to be a need to do all kinds of things to make sure that that happens on time. It looks like it's going to be. But talking about maintenance and IT and all kinds of things. I think we need to really focus on those types of things. I think technology in the schools is a big issue. I think when we build a school like the one that's being built down at the high school, middle school site, I mean, it's filled with state-of-the-art technology, and I think the town needs to make sure that we have the right people in place who can handle that technology in terms of maintaining that building. I think that's something that needs to be happening. I think there are some initiatives going on right now. I think in the school department there's some training that's going to be happening with an employee. The contractor is going to be training this employee to try to educate them about some of those systems. But I think that's one of the initiatives that I would be looking to do in the future. There's no lack of them. I think Winthrop Beach, I don't know if anyone's going to ask a question about that, but that should be on everybody's first list of things that need to be addressed going forward in terms of the town. That's our beach. It's not done properly. We can talk about that if someone asks a question. Thank you.
Mr. Neal?
I hate to ask you to repeat that, but if
Oh,
you
it's
wouldn't
okay.
mind.
What are the specific town-related issues that you plan to focus on over the next few years that would further add to the strides that the town has made over the last decade?
Okay, so the first and most important one is I am going to continue to maintain a focus on effective financial restraint for the town's long-term viability and sustainability. We have a 2.5% increase that we're allowed to go for taxes every year. We must make sure that our expenses stay below 2.15. In terms of other issues, there's a tremendous opportunity coming for the schools with our IT. I've worked with the schools on their IT. I was involved when they started with it. I've recently met with the Director of Curriculum, Frank Woods, to talk about an IT platform for the students moving forward. It's also an unfunded issue. We have to decide how we're going to fund IT. If we are going to be giving each new sixth grader an iPad, we have an expense for that. Those iPads are going to require content. We're going to have to not only create content, develop content, and pay for content. We're no longer going to be able to shift book sales or book purchases from one year to the next to affect our budget. So I think it becomes very, very important, not to say we want to do IT, but to have a solid IT plan. Along the IT lines, but not in it, we're spending $25,000 a year right now to go back and digitize town records. One of the first things I expect to do, and I tried to do earlier this year, was create a digital town hall. From now on, starting day one, when you walk into town hall, you should enter your information into the computer, it should be printed out for you, and from that moment in time on, we will never have to spend money going back to documents from 1950 and 1960 to digitize them.
Thank you. I'm going to have the opportunity to ask the 11th and final question. It is not about the beach, fortunately or unfortunately.
Want to
but you
rethink that?
could address it at your,
Okay.
in your closing statements if you'd like. Candidate Mail, what I'd like to ask you is about winter.
I love the winter.
Okay. You remember last winter, I'm sure. We don't know if this coming winter will be as severe, but we do know that we will have many more harsh winters to come. What would you do to ensure that we are prepared every year to deal with whatever Mother Nature throws in our path?
I one time said to my wife, you're not judged by what happens to you, you're judged by how you handle what happens to you. If you happened to watch the council meeting the other night, you'll notice I had an exchange with Jim McKenna and Steve Caller and said, what's our plan for hunkering down the boys from Buffalo? For those of you that remember last year, we were lucky enough to be able to get a crew from Buffalo to come in. They had a couple of trucks, front-end loaders, they had a couple of 10-wheelers, and they were to come in and help us out. So what we have done is we've contracted with them this year. And the nice thing about it is once we bring them in, we can also farm them out to other cities and towns so we can keep them going. But the real key to the success of last year, which most people will not say was a success, but the real key to it was the fact that the last few years we've had a $200,000 and then $227,000 cost for our snow removal. At the end of the first storm in February this year, we were already up to $307,000. That was reported by Tim Gordon, the town CFO. I asked him specifically, and I think you were there, Sue, I asked him specifically, are you looking for ways to pay that? And he said, I'll look at ideas. And I said, my idea is that we have put $3 million in the bank. Now is the time to take some of that money out. So we are going to budget again this year for the 45 inches that we normally get. We're going to try and hold it. I have asked that we increase our bottom line. It's a very arcane accounting thing. I've asked that we increase, and we have. We've gone from $70,000 to $80,000 to $90,000 over the last couple of years. But keeping our financial house in order will allow us to handle the rough parts that we have.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Candidate Driscoll, how would you ensure that we were able to handle the rough winters? And I'll give you an extra 10 seconds because Canada Mail took 10 seconds.
Well, my first thought is Aruba. But seriously, I think last winter was, we think, an anomaly, but it may not be. The climate's changing clearly, and I think the town may have experienced something last winter that it may experience again. Who knows? But I think we need to be ready for that. I watched, like everybody did, council meetings during that time, and I think, it's a curveball to be thrown when that type of an event occurs, or these back-to-back storms, weekend Mondays after Mondays. It was tough, but sometimes I thought that the council also got kind of hunkered down, and was making decisions that perhaps maybe the professionals might have been making rather than at council, at deciding what streets are one way, how many inches from the curb should the snow be before we before we have any kind of ticketing for cars parked on the street. I think we need to do a lessons learned. I'm sure that's already happened. I'm not aware of that, but what went well, what didn't go well. I think I'm sure things that could be improved that we could implement this year.
Thank you so much. Well, that concludes our second segment. And now we will be moving on to the questions from candidate to candidate. And we will begin with candidate Driscoll asking candidate Mail a question.
Thank you. Craig, what do you foresee as one of the biggest challenges if you were elected president of council in terms of the executive versus the legislative role that is different in each one of those roles? Would you envision any need to change the way that you're working in the council, or would you just continue working exactly the same way that you are now?
Well, I don't run the council right now, so I don't have that type of responsibility. But what would the council be under Craig Mail? If that's the question, that's fine. The council under Craig Mail is going to be hopefully more active. I would like to assign each councilor to a specific committee for a couple of reasons. I think the committees, the town committees that meet there, finance, planning, they need the support of the council. I know the council president goes to meetings, I know I go to meetings, but I think we have to broaden that out. So I would like to see councilors that will be working with me each take an area of expertise. Selfishly, I won't have to go to every meeting every night the way I do now, and also it will broaden out the perspective of what is going on at those meetings, and it will also give a credible amount of responsibility to the committee so that they know there's people there that care about them. Other than that, I intend on putting in the same 125% effort that I've put in over the last couple of years. I find it a great pleasure going to council meetings. I find it a great pleasure when a citizen walks in, they know that their they know that their council people are there, sitting there with them and for them.
Thank you. Mr. Mail, you can now direct a question to candidate Driscoll.
Bob, given the complexities of municipal government and the far-reaching implications of the decisions made by the person who takes this office, I feel that an additional set of debates should be held from now until the election to allow for a deeper conversation about issues such as finance, economic development, infrastructure, the beach, and certainly the schools, which you have not talked enough about. Would you agree to debate me once a week over the next 3 weeks? If not, why?
No. And the reason why is not because I wouldn't want to do that, but basically I've been running my campaign for months, and I've actually got a really full schedule. I have many coffee hours and events planned, and unless something really interesting and something that was you know, going to be available for the entire community, I'd consider doing that if my schedule permitted, but I'm telling you that right now, I'm probably not going to be able to do that.
Okay.
Candidate Driscoll, question for Candidate Mayo.
Okay. You know, Craig, you have a reputation of an idea person, throwing ideas out there, seeing which ones stick. You've done that. It's added some interesting things in the town council. I think as a leader, one of the roles of a leader is to help develop and kind of nurture ideas that other people have kind of over your own ideas. And I wonder if you're going to have any difficulty doing that in the council role, given your kind of tendency to throw out a lot of your own ideas.
I think the people in Winthrop are looking for ideas. I think they're looking for visions. I don't think they're looking for the status quo. And I think as a councilor, I've satisfied that. And as a matter of fact, while you may feel that you have thrown out too many ideas, many of my ideas have started to go forward. Over 2 years ago, we started on a houseboat ordinance, and that has now become a part of the lexicon. I have pushed for, I have thrown out ideas for the effective utilization of the town parking lots. The town manager is starting to do that. I have worked with both the town manager, the CFO, and the schools to think about a different approach to their IT. I am willing to look at anybody's ideas. And quite frankly, a lot of my ideas have been rebuffed. And quite frankly, a lot of my ideas should have been rebuffed. But the fact remains that we thrive on bringing new things to the table. A Craig Mill presidency is not likely to be a presidency where we will sit there and go through benign meetings night after night. It is a place where I will encourage discussion. As a matter of fact, one of the first things I learned in the beginning, and you will see this happen in many cases, I don't necessarily always make a motion. I sometimes make motions to have a discussion on a subject. But I think that's what people want, and I hope people that are going to vote for me are going to be interested in seeing those new ideas.
Thank you. Mr. Mayo, you now have the opportunity to ask Mr. Driscoll a question.
Bob, you began your campaign for the presidency of the council in January of this year. Since that time, with the exception of your attendance on many of your citizens' finance, a couple of DCRs and one ordinance, you've chosen not to take an active participatory role in the process. Will this be a passive approach that you're likely to take as you become president of the council?
No, not at all. And
Okay.
I thought you might ask that question. And I was going to ask you, it's part of my answer, you know, where were you for the first 58 years of your life? Because for the last half of that 58 years, I was involved in the Board of Selectmen Advisory Committee. I went to hundreds of meetings over that period of time. And I went to other meetings that maybe weren't town government meetings, but they were meetings about things that I'm involved in, boards of directors that I'm served on, other activities. So I'm not an elected official, you know, and I'm on the Citizens Finance Committee. I've attended all the meetings, I think, maybe but for one or two of that group. And as town council president, of course I'm going to meetings. I mean, I think it's important for the town council president to be represented, even if it's just to be there and to be a force in the meeting to make people know that there's an interest at the town council level. So absolutely, I plan to participate more.
Thank you. And Mr. Driscoll, your final question for candidate Mayo.
So Craig, some of the feedback that I've gotten as I've campaigned from people is that when they watch the town council meetings, there's sometimes a tendency to micromanage issues. I've heard that from a number of people as I've campaigned. And, you know, rather than relying on the professionals as much as some people think would be appropriate, the town council just gets into a lot of the minutia of the decision making. I'm hearing this from folks. I'm wondering if you think that's a valid assessment, and if it is, what would you do to change that perception?
I don't know who you're hearing it from, so I don't know if it's a valid assessment or not. It may be, it may not be. I take my responsibility on the council very, very seriously, and I think the decisions I made have to be made on a very, very structured basis. I try to find out as much information as I can. I work very, very hard in the background to see that. So when I get into the town council, I'm there to make the decisions. They're not going to be made in a quick manner. I like to take my time, I like to decide, I like to get all the information, and I like to put it forward. So I don't know that that will change in the future. If you're going to be joining the council because you think you'll be out at 8 o'clock, may not be a good place to be.
Thank you. Mr. Mayle, your final question for candidate Driscoll.
During the final Citizens Finance Committee meeting, two important issues were discussed: the funding of a remedial English tutor and the expansion of the Winthrop Public Schools hours. Despite the importance put on the teaching position and the positive effect to all citizens for the expanded Winthrop Public Library hours, you voted no to both of those appropriations. Can you explain the reason why?
Sure. I know that it might have been portrayed that that somehow was an anti-library or anti-school vote. It was anything but that. I've been a supporter of both of those entities throughout my life, and especially my work on the two elementary schools. I was actively involved and actively pushed all of those projects. The reason that I voted no on that was really because of process and because of fairness. And so when we went through that process with all of those departments, we heard from probably almost every department that they had inadequate resources, that they could benefit from having another body. And I felt like in that meeting that we were making that final call, that we were actually deciding to fund a position for one department over another, when I thought that all of the departments made a really good argument and had equal footing for that. And so I didn't feel comfortable making that decision, one department over another. And the other thing is that, especially with the school process, another thing is that the funding for those positions needed to be taken from somewhere. And so from a perspective of process, I found it uncomfortable for that group that we were with that night to sit there and say, well, we're going to take this from unemployment insurance, or we're going to take this from workman's comp. We're second guessing the CFO and the town manager who determined what those funding levels were. So those are the two reasons that I voted the way that I did.
All right.
Thank you. So that ends our third segment. And now we'll go on to our closing remarks. Mr. Mayle, you have the first opportunity.
So first of all, I want to thank you all and all the citizens of Winthrop for sitting here and doing your civic duty by watching tonight. This has been a tremendous opportunity for me, and I want to say that I've enjoyed the last few years immensely. I've worked tremendously hard, and I do get out there and I do get a micromanaging type of place because I'm tremendously passionate about it. I spoke to you earlier about the three elements of my campaign that I still think are very, very important. A tremendous amount of experience in going to these meetings, and experience that has happened over the last couple of years. Where was I the first 58 years of my life? Half of that as a child, and the rest of that as a parent raising my children, where I thought I would be better off than separating my time. Since my time on the council, I've worked very, very hard. I worked hard to promote Winthrop people about the FEMA map changes. I helped to, as I said, work on the houseboats. I participated in the town economic development study and the development of the center business district. I have a vision, and a vision for a few things. While some people understand the expense side of the ledger, there is a tremendous opportunity on our revenue side. I'm not sure that Winthrop needs a $2.5 million surplus every year when we could cut down our surplus and put a little more meat on the table. I think we can add some people in our public services. I think we have to look at parity. One of the things that you spoke of, Paul, was the fact that at one point in time, should we have a master plan? One of those master plans is going to have to address the fact that we cannot afford to lose 50 teachers, 5 firemen, 6 policemen every year because of wage parity. In terms of some of the things I hope to get done with my vision, I hope that we can develop a Winthrop Studies Day where students can come out every year and learn about Winthrop and move forward. I will be able to expand the Winthrop Public Library hours through the revenue. And finally, leadership. That's something that everybody has to decide on your own. If you feel as you watch the council meetings that I am too weeded down and not a leader, then you'll make that decision. But if not, I think you'll see what I've stood for and how I've stood, and you'll vote for me in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Driscoll.
Well, thank you, everybody who helped make this debate happen. I hope those watching this on TV have enjoyed it and have obtained some information that will help them in their decision on November 3rd. I want to thank Craig for his participation. I don't know if people know, but Craig and I have really known each other since we were kids. He's older than me, but
Doesn't look it.
but he's older than me. He'd like to say he's wiser than me too, but
I think we can vote on that.
it would be a tie. So, but he comes from a wonderful family, really. His mother and father I have been great contributors to the community. His in-laws, the Nicholas family, I've known them since I was a kid, and they're wonderful friends of mine. And Craig and I have talked during the campaign, and especially in the beginning, and I expressed to Craig that I think I would have enjoyed being with him on the council. And I think we tried to each talk each other out of doing this, and neither of us prevailed. So unfortunately, at this stage, we're not going to be able to serve together. But I hope that we have that opportunity sometime, and I wish you well. Voters have a good choice in this election, not just in this particular race, the school committee, other races. For my part, I believe that my lengthy progressive role in town government and other aspects of the community make me a viable candidate. It gives me a solid basis for being the town council president. And so I think that I hope you consider voting for me on November 3rd. And thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. Thanks to both of you. I made a couple of notes to myself while the debate was going on, and I think I'm going to send a copy of this debate to Washington so that those guys can learn how to debate, because you gentlemen were both great. You were on point, you were civil, you answered the questions that were asked of you, you ended on time. I thought it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Could I just say one thing?
Certainly.
Bob and I have both agreed that we're going to build a fence, but we're going to buy the 2x4s from Woodside.
Oh, absolutely.
So you know.
I wanted to surprise him. I didn't want to tell.
Sorry I let it out.
Thank
I'm
you so
always
much. Well,
getting ahead of it.
That is the end of our debate, and I'd like to thank our candidates, our panel, our timekeepers, and the staff here at WCAT. And a special thanks to Mike Cabral, Executive Director of WCAT, and Betsy Shane, Executive Director of the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce. In closing, I would like to remind you that the sponsoring groups neither support nor oppose either candidate, but seek to promote an informed vote, to acquaint the voters with the candidates and issues, and to encourage voter participation in the upcoming election. This program will be rebroadcast up until Election Day on WCAT Channel 22. Remember to vote in the town election on November 3rd, and thank you and good evening.